Fill in the blank. Love is
the soul's recognition of another soul. Which is actually the definition of agape, which is the Greek word for love.
Yes.
Aristotle said that. I didn't make that up. Aristotle did that. Sorry, guys.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ellie. I'm part of the 92nd Street Y Talks team. So nice to see so many of you here with us on this rainy evening. What better place to be, truly. Tonight, we are thrilled to welcome award-winning matchmaker Maria Avgitidis in honor of her new book, aptly titled Ask a Matchmaker, which as of this morning is a USA Today bestseller. If you haven't already picked up your copy, please make sure to do so from our booksellers in the lobby. They are freshly signed, could not be fresher. Tonight is also a special live taping of Maria's podcast, so be sure to check that out if you're not already a listener. We are thrilled to have fashion and social media mogul Chrissy Rutherford here as well to be in conversation with Maria. Thank you so much, Chrissy, for being here and doing this. Before we get started, please note that our ushers are distributing cards for your burning dating questions. So we're going to try to get to as many of those as we can. So just fill those out, put your name on there. If you are watching on the live stream, hello. We will answer your questions as well, so put those in the chat. Thank you all so much for being here and for supporting our programs. And with that, please give a very warm welcome to Maria and Chrissy.
Look at us. Look at us.
Get us.
Look at us.
Hi, everyone. I'm so honored to be here with you all tonight at the 92nd Street Y. For those who don't know who I am, I'm Chrissy Rutherford. I'm a former fashion editor and now the creator of Forward Joy, a newsletter and podcast about self-care and living intentionally. I think most of us are already familiar with this incredible woman sitting to my right, my dear friend Maria Avgitidis, also known as Matchmaker Maria. She's a fourth-generation matchmaker, the CEO of Agape Match, and also the host of a very popular podcast, Ask a Matchmaker, which I've had the pleasure of being a guest on not once, but twice. I first met Maria in 2017 while I was an editor at Harper's Bazaar, and I just Googled matchmakers and happened to find her, and I interviewed her for a story. And, you know, from the minute I got in Maria's office and we started talking, I just instantly knew that I liked her because she's just so direct and such a straight shooter. I'd never heard anyone talk about dating in the way that she does. And that's still very true today. And obviously Maria's advice on love and relationships has completely penetrated all the noise on social media, which is very, very hard to do. And, she's helped so many people get into their healthiest and long-lasting relationships thanks to the 12-date rule. And we can't forget Matchmaker Maria's other Maria-isms, the Stanley Tucci theory, the green theory. I know a lot of us got the memo. And now Maria's taking her wisdom from the matchmaking world and has poured it into her debut book, Ask a Matchmaker, which came out last week. And of course, as we said, is now a USA Today bestseller.
Thank you.
And of course, we're here tonight to celebrate what I believe is going to be a modern day version of the rules, a fresh, honest, and much more empowering guide to love and dating in the 21st century.
From your lips to God's ears.
So Maria, obviously you've been on social media for a long time, answering the questions every Wednesday, you're in your DMs, you're analyzing the dating profiles. When did you realize there was a need for a book like this?
It's interesting. First of all, I just want to say thank you so much for everyone being here. I cannot tell you what this support means, and the fact that we filled this up is amazing. In terms of when the book needed to be written, originally I was offered, let's call it a book deal when I was 25. I'm 40 now. And I remember at 25 talking to the person who's offering and saying, "Oh, I'm too young. I don't know what my philosophy is yet. Let me get back to you."
Yeah.
And then it was just before the pandemic hit where I was starting to get a little bit more crystal of like, okay, this is how things should be done. But then over time, I realized, oh, I really need to get a book out, because I think people who consume some of my content, be it on Instagram or blog or whatever it is, even the podcast, they tend to see my advice as black and white. And it's not actually black and white. There's a lot of context, and that context is not only my heritage, but the fact that I talk to 40 single people every single week for 1-hour interviews, not just me, myself and my matchmaking team at my company. And so, we just have all this information. And so when someone asks me a question on Ask a Matchmaker Wednesdays on the podcast, it's just like, okay, well, here's the answer, it's quick. And that's when I was like, okay, I think we need to start adding a little bit more context, and I would have the opportunity with a book.
Yeah.
And I think that's what happened in the book, is that there was some context, there was some background sharing. It wasn't just, oh, did someone catch that story or that video? It was,
right.
Here it is, it's packaged for you.
Absolutely. And what do you think makes this book different than other dating and relationship books? Because there's a lot out there. Obviously, I referenced The Rules, which I feel like has for a long time been the sort of like the guide, even though it's pretty hard to follow. Yeah,
and there's no shade to any of the other dating books out there, but I think the core difference between Ask a Matchmaker and the rest of my colleagues is that my dating book is meant to be finished, and that is because it's constructed in a storytelling sort of way.
Yeah.
Were
there any surprising lessons you learned while you were writing the book?
I learned a lot about a bicycle. Has anyone gotten to that part? It's in chapter 1. I didn't know that before I started writing the book. I knew the history of dating and I knew the history of marriage, but I just kept seeing in the data that suddenly in the United States in 1880 and 1890 something happened, and something happened to a certain part of the population, and it was the people who could afford bicycles. Right? So who could afford a bicycle in the United States in 1990? It was white women. So suddenly white women were able to congregate to other places, socialize, dating, but also fight for their rights.
Yeah.
And as much as the suffragette movement did a lot of things, and in fact the bicycle is their symbol, right? It took a while for women of color to also be folded into that conversation because they did not have the equal access to that bicycle.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a pretty interesting thing over time.
Very interesting factoid there.
Yeah.
So back to social media, there's so much dating advice out there. It is so overwhelming. There are many self-proclaimed experts, and I think a lot of the dating advice feels overly simplistic and quite rigid, like high-value man versus low-value man, a black cat versus golden retriever.
I only just learned about this morning.
I don't know if anyone's on that side of TikTok, but I just sent Maria the black cat golden retriever video. Box theory, there's so many.
Yeah.
And I get that these frameworks can kind of help people feel like they have some sense of control in a very chaotic dating world. But what I think you've done really well is you offer a framework that I think really encourages people to be themselves, to be honest about what they want, and to think honestly about what they really want in partnership, and communication, which is so important.
And if I could add to that, I think that there are a lot of, I call it dating influence culture. And it's a really huge net that is included in that. I mean, we can also include Andrew Tate as a dating influencer, right?
Oh God.
If you don't know who that is, you are so lucky.
So lucky.
But what I think I tend to find myself having to remind people is that when you hear certain terms online, especially on TikTok, where it's so easy to monetize by saying the controversial thing, there are people whose entire full-time job is creating controversial takes to get you angry, to get you having a pretty polarizing emotion
Yeah.
where then you're commenting, but they're actually making money off of those views. And it's not a
Absolutely.
little money.
No.
It's a lot of money.
Yeah, people are paying their rent with these checks.
Right. Yeah. So, and on the other side, I work in the dating industry. I've been in the dating industry for more than 15 years, and I see what myself, my team, my colleagues in the industry do. And, we have mentors, we have certifications, we just have all this other knowledge that, I'm not the kind of person who's ever going to call a man a high value man. It's just not in my vocabulary. But it's really sticky, right? People comment, so.
And I think it also speaks to, on the internet, it's like all these buzzwords that usually ends up what sticks.
Right.
Because it's easy to be like, yeah, I'm looking for a high value man and I'm a high value woman, and all of these things that fit neatly into like these labels that are not like real
the internet
world.
telling you what a high value man is and a high value woman is. And it's like a high value man is a guy who's
rich,
a certain height and certain wealth status. And, if you're not thin and if you don't look this way and if you're not under 30, and it's like, what kind of message are you trying to give people? Like, I don't think we should all be looking for high value men or that sort of, you should be looking for the person who's compatible to you. And I think that's what Ask a Matchmaker does, is it breaks down the compatibility for you. Like, what I hope anyone who reads Ask a Matchmaker feels like that I'm meeting you where you're at. That's how I wrote the book. And, everyone's going to do chapter 4 and chapter 5 very differently when they do their matrix of compatibility pillars. I've seen it 1,000 different ways.
Yeah.
But that's the point, right? You're not supposed to be competing all for the same type of man. You have your own person that you would be compatible with.
Yeah. And I also, as I said before, like, I really appreciate how much you encourage people to actually communicate their needs, because, even from my personal experience, like, that was something that was always really difficult for me. And I've been on such a journey with that. And, when you do Ask a Matchmaker, you get so many questions from women who are like, I've been dating this guy for 4 months and like, I don't know how to, like, when do I tell him that, like, I need more texts from him, or like,
Just
he's
tell
going on vacation, and how do I figure out, like, when are we going to communicate?
And the simplest
You're
answer is just tell them or ask them.
Yeah.
I don't think if you're in a healthy relationship, you shouldn't feel confused. You should feel acknowledged, and you should be able to ask for clarity all steps of the way, to make sure that you maintain a very even communication, weight against each other.
Yeah. How do you think this book, and also your work, helps people deal with the uncertainty around dating? Because I think arguably that is one of the hardest parts. It's like, we can work on ourselves, we can be the best version of ourselves. Lord knows I've tried, but it takes another person to want to be with you.
And that's what it is, right? You are only 50% of the equation if you are prescribing to a monogamous relationship. You are only half of the equation. So, I try to stop saying like, be the best version of yourself, because we have life happening to us. It's hard to be the best, but you are unique in what you are. And if you don't feel like you have something unique about yourself, figure out what is that unique thing you've always wanted to do. Maybe it's learning how to knit. Maybe it's taking that improv class, but at least you're doing something to, grow within yourself. But at the same time, to kind of go back to your question, I feel like one of the matchmaker Mariaisms that has helped is the 12-date rule, which you referenced before. One of the things that I don't want, I've just never seen it, where if two people are dating, and it's, I don't want to say meant to be, but it's going to turn into something. It rarely takes more than 8 weeks. Like, I want to say 6 weeks. And I'll make it maybe up to 3 months if there's like other outside criteria happening, outside forces. But for the most part, most relationships are 6 weeks. We're going to start dating together and grow together and whatever it is. And I know some people might disagree with that timeline, and I would ask, like, well, why do you disagree with it? Why should it take longer than 6 weeks? And I think because I say stuff like timelines in chapter 11, I think you should question why you allowed a situationship to be 5 months without figuring out what is this? Why am I spending time with you?
And this is definitely one of your I think more strict frameworks in your book is around this timeline for dating, and it's information I wish that I had 10 years ago or more than 10 years ago, but because I'm what would it have done for my poor anxiously attached brain when I was in my 20s if I had known okay, it's month 4 talking to this guy and nothing's really happening.
You're still seeing each other.
Okay, I gotta dead this and move on. But
right.
no, you stay in it and you wait and hope that, okay, well maybe the next time we hang out, maybe the next time he'll finally decide or he'll finally choose me.
And then you hear about Theodore in the book. Does anyone remember who Theodore is in the book? Theodore, I don't know if anyone's read it in the whole week, but I do reference a man that I dated named Theodore. That's not his real name. He did call me last week to tell me, though, that he bought the book.
Aww. The only time it's good to talk to your ex is
the only time. The book. The only time. But I did actually call Theodore ahead of time to tell him, I think he's only one of 2 people that I reference in the book that I called. Everyone else, I'm oh, I don't care about
you. You can deal.
You can deal with this. But Theodore was someone who I went on the best first date with. The best first date. And at the end, he said, I could tell him you're looking for something serious, but I'm not there yet, but let's go out again. And I was just well, wait a second, I've been on this, I've heard this before. I've been on this roller coaster before. First of all, we've only been on a first date. Why are you telling me I can tell you're looking for something serious? I'm not there yet. Oh, it's because he's trying to tell me that we can keep dating.
Right, but don't expect anything.
But don't expect anything. And he told me that on the first date. And the thing is, a lot of people who might exhibit, let's say, an avoidant attachment tendency, they do tell you within the first 3 dates. Oh, no. In some way, it's hidden. And sometimes it's not even about telling you, it's texting you 5 days later after the first date, not immediately, because they want to, sort of, I don't want to say groom, that's not the right word. But they're trying to lower your expectations of what is reasonable communication behavior. And so, I just didn't go on a second date with him. And because I knew what would happen, and here's what would have happened. We would have dated, and, we would have had, we would have been intimate, and we would have kept dating, and then it would have been exclusive, but he's not my boyfriend.
I don't understand that
at
all.
And then I would
When did we start allowing that?
Yeah, and then I would try to make him my boyfriend 6 weeks or 7 weeks later and say, oh, I'm not there yet. We don't need titles. I know some people are feeling really triggered right now. And then eventually, 3 months, 6 months down the line, it's always 6 months, we would be at dinner at a restaurant and I would be crying because he's telling me, listen, Maria, I told you. I'm not looking for something serious. And you know what the worst part about that interaction is? He's right.
I know.
He told me on date 1. And I just...
But you go up to your friends and you're he's such an asshole.
Yeah. And I think that's what those kind of relationships do. They push you away from your friends, too.
Yeah.
Because you don't want that check. That's why I think Ask a Matchmaker, when I started in 2018, my sister, who's actually flew in from Greece for this, she said it, and I say in the book, I was giving the advice that none of your friends had the courage to give.
Yeah.
Not because your friends are bad. It's because your friends want to be your friend. They don't want you to push them away.
Yeah.
So send it to me, and I'll be you know what, you should block them. Call the police. Y'all saw that answer today, right?
Yeah.
So that's what it really is.
And something that I also really appreciated is that you highlight that men who are legitimately interested in you are going to match your enthusiasm.
Yeah, you can't, if a man is into you, I know we're talking heteronormatively right now, but this applies to gay men as well. If they're into you, they are tripping over themselves to get on that second date. They're not even, I know I gave you 3 days, but they're not even waiting 24 hours. I have set up, I think well over 7,000 first dates now.
Yeah.
And any second date that and we also, at my company, we set up both your first and second date. So if it works on your first date, both people tell us, and then we also set up the second date because I don't trust anybody. I need that momentum to get you to latch. But I have never had a situation in the 17 years I've been a professional matchmaker where the second date wasn't locked in within 24, 36 hours.
Yeah.
Like even now, I was on the phone with a client back in the green room, and that's what was happening. Oh, he went on a date yesterday, and he's like, lock it in, second date, when is it happening? And I'm like, okay, you know, that's what it is. It's always tripping over themselves.
I know. I mean, in my own personal experience, it's like I love when they want to set up the second date when the first date's not even done. Like,
that's ecstasy. Who needs drugs?
it's important. But it's also great because I'm like, okay, if it's been 48 hours and I haven't heard from them, next, you're done.
But isn't that freeing?
It is.
Isn't that freeing? I feel like that's what blew people's minds when they saw that. It was, I wrote this and talked about this in other content way before the book came out. But it was interesting to see how many women just felt, you know, the chains fall off the hands. Like, oh, he didn't call me within 3 days. Well, okay, I'm moving on, you know. Don't.
Like, even giving them a week, I'm like, for what?
A week.
A week to ask you out on a second date?
Which is going to happen 10 days from now.
Oh my God,
that's,
no
come on.
way.
Yeah.
No way. Should we talk a little bit about ghosting? A very modern phenomenon that we didn't have a word for, 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Have you ever had a client, are your clients allowed to ghost? Like, has that ever happened?
I've had a client.
I can only imagine the wrath that they would have to face.
You know, it's funny. I've had a client ghost me in the sense that I never heard from him again, which was great because I cashed his check. And I was like, oh, you don't want to answer my emails? Okay. You know, no teaksy backsies. But I've, as the reference in the book.
Yes, I was going to say, you have your own very traumatic.
That was traumatic.
Ghosting
And that was before
experience.
ghosting was in the vernacular. Like,
were you legitimately worried that this man might be dead?
Yeah, I was calling. I speak a little Italian, and I was calling hospitals in Naples.
Where he was on vacation or on a work trip?
He was on a work trip.
So he says.
I did not call him to let him know that he's in the book. But I was dating this man, and it was quite serious. We were dating for 3 months. 3 months. We hadn't locked it in, but we went on 2 trips together. I had met his friends. We had made a lot of memories together. And we were intimate and all that stuff that comes with, new love, right? Yeah. And I was like falling for him. Yeah. And I remember on Friday night in 2012, on a nice March day, those days where you can actually, it's like the first fake spring.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was going to Italy for a business trip, and he's like, I'll see you on Monday. I'm like, cool. And then Monday comes along, and I text him like, hey, do you need me to pick you up from the airport? Yeah, that's how much I like him.
I know, you were...
And that was before Uber. I have a car, okay? That was before Uber had come out.
That's real love.
That's real love. I was like, am I getting on the highway for you? Like, what do you want? And it never got delivered. And I was just confused because ghosting had yet to be a word yet. That didn't come out into the ecosystem of dating words until I think 2014.
Yeah.
So I remember when that article came out talking about ghosting, I think in Time magazine, I actually forwarded to him. I was like, oh, this is what happened. Now I know.
This is what you did
This is
to
what
me.
it was. But when it happened, when he wasn't responding, and then I started calling, I was going to voicemail, I had never experienced this before. And I started to get scared. And then, I thought, oh, maybe he died. And I don't know what came over me, but I emailed him and I said, hey, is everything okay? Do I need to call your mother and tell her something awful has happened? I don't know, maybe he's answering his email. I just couldn't figure out what had happened. And he just wrote back 2 words within 30 minutes, I'm alive. Yeah. I don't think I've ever said it.
I know. I was like, that was a real.
But it was really shocking because I now knew I had to find my own closure. This person was never going to give me the closure. I was angry. I was upset. I was crying into a pillow, and I could feel the trust I have for people. And I think a lot of people in this room may have felt this when this happens. And this is why I actually take issue when ghosting is a real thing in dating, and it's called disappearing. Yeah. Right? We just call it ghosting. But I hear people, I've had celebrities tell me, oh, I got ghosted. And I was like, well, tell me about it. It's like, well, we went on our first date and then he never called for the second. I'm like, that's dating.
Yeah.
That's not ghosting.
They don't owe you anything.
You don't have, you have not had the emotional bandwidth. If you saw a ghost, you'd be scared. That's how if you saw them again on the subway, a guy you didn't go on a first date with, you'd be like, maybe I
Okay.
hook up with him.
Yeah.
Like that's a totally different emotion. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I know the first time I ever got ghosted was a guy that I met through mutual friends. Like sometimes you think that meeting people through
Oh, yeah.
people you know that they're gonna have like a bit more like integrity or treat you nicer, but that was not my experience.
Tell their friend, you should tell your friends.
Yeah, they knew. Oh my god, I was so devastated.
Yeah.
Tell me your favorite client story from the book. I have one.
I want to
which
hear
is,
yours.
Of course, the guy who wanted to be set up with a European Gemini woman and that you talked to his psychic.
I just need you all to know that when that paragraph was being written, I was thinking of Chrissy. I was like, oh, she's gonna love this. Because she likes horoscopes. I mean, I don't,
astrology.
excuse me, I'm sorry, astrology. I don't know a lot about that world, but I will go on TikTok or I'll go on your stories and I will listen to you talk about it. That's like ASMR. It scratches a corner of my brain. I wish I knew more about it.
I need
but
to read your chart.
I've texted
Do you
it.
know you're a big three?
Mom?
You're a Sagittarius,
Yeah.
obviously.
So I don't know my big three, but I love that, and
We'll do
I
later.
love that that's your favorite client. My favorite client is actually, oh my God, I have so many. The one that's coming to mind for me right now is my client who was showing avoidant tendencies, and I said to him, okay, I'm done setting you up. You need to read Attached by Dr. Amir Levine and Rachel
you
Heller.
also recommended
Such
to
a
me.
great book.
Changed my life.
I was like, read this book, and I'm not setting you up until, whatever. And then I happened to go to a dermatology appointment the following day, and this woman's like, she's got me naked in the room, checking me for moles. And I'm like, are you single? I think you might be a match for one of my clients. And, he called me a few days later to talk about what he had learned about himself reading that book. And I said, I think I have a match for you. I've been talking to this woman who, she's my dermatologist. I mean, that's what matchmakers do, right? Like, we just talk to everyone and we're like, ooh, let's think about you. And he's like, yeah, I'm game. I think I know like what my triggers are. I'm gonna work with a therapist. Like, let's do it. And now they're running a vegan restaurant in New England. And it's just like, that's crazy to me. First of all, she was a medical doctor.
Yeah.
Like what? He worked in finance. Like, what do you mean you guys live in New England running a vegan restaurant? Are you
You're like, huh?
vegan?
Yeah.
So that I remember
That was a
getting that
twist.
story. And I knew something was about to happen because this rarely happens, but this particular client wanted to go on a double date with me and my husband to like celebrate. And they took us to a
Aw.
vegan restaurant.
We're like, why do I have to get involved in this?
George and I were just like, okay, well, we're thinking about opening this up in New England. And I'm like, oh, okay,
Aw.
cool. I was like, this is how we're celebrating with Brussels sprouts? All right.
That's kind of cute.
Roasted cauliflower.
So in the dating landscape right now, I think everyone is dying to meet someone in person. Like, raise your hand if you're tired of dating apps. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people.
How do you feel about people deleting the dating apps right now?
If you need a break, it's fine. But there are a lot of great people online dating. There are a lot of great people online dating. A lot of people are very bad at filling out their profile, women included.
It's driving me crazy.
I get your
I just-
screenshots every day, and I'm like perplexed. Like, I know that women love to rag on men online, but I've seen a lot of women's online dating profiles.
Oh, I'm sure.
And I'm like, you're blurry. What are you doing? Or it'll say like under the prompt, like, I'll know you're the one if you drive me to the airport. And I'm like, I've learned nothing except that you don't own a car. Like, you only have such limited space. So I feel like if you don't want an online date, that's fine. I know though that a majority of people do have online dating apps on their phones. So what I would say to you, if the app that you're on isn't working for you, change it up, go to another app. There's plenty to choose from. I would get professional photos done. I would fill out the prompts. I would try to answer everything positively. And I would also beg you to read chapter 8 and learn how to think of online dating apps as a tool. It's not a dating app, it's a meetup app. I don't need you pen paling strangers that happen to live in your neighborhood and share the same religion as you.
Yeah.
I need you to go for a walk with them. It's okay.
You've definitely inspired me to totally change my approach to the apps because, like, Do you guys remember back in the day when we first started using dating apps? It was like totally.
She's on OkCupid.
Well, I was never been on OkCupid. Never been on OkCupid.
But it was taboo.
No, it was total. I feel like it was totally normal to talk to someone on a dating app for like 2 weeks.
Oh, that's crazy.
Before meeting, and like you somehow thought like you were getting to know this person.
And texting doesn't count for anything.
And yeah, or you would just like be texting with them for 2 weeks. No, I'm like, if we don't have a date set up within 24 hours, I'm sorry, but I don't have the attention span to talk to strangers on the apps for days on end. Like, I'm just really quick about it, and I filled my profile out so intentionally. So like even the other day, a man messaged me and was like, "Hey Chrissy, great to connect." That's your first message to me? Like I have so many interesting things like on my profile that like I didn't reply. I didn't reply. Well, I was gonna reply to him and say like, "Is this a business meeting? Why are you writing me great to connect?"
I don't know. I think, yeah, that is true. Great to connect. Wow, that's crazy.
No,
to say that.
it's like I have that like,
Yeah.
my dream is to write a book. Like I live between New York and London. Like there's just
have stuff in there.
There's so much to work with.
Yeah, I don't
so
think
much
people
to work
realize
with.
when they should be looking at the message bait. But the chapter 8 does talk about this, so.
So much to work with.
Yeah.
Okay, so I really appreciate what you share about your own marriage in this book, and George is here tonight in the audience. Woo! Mr. Matchmaker Maria. And it really helped me understand like why you also recommend this to couples and married people, because I found your perspective really encouraging, especially the idea that like you have to meet your partners where they're at and just accept them for who they are. And you share a really interesting tidbit about how obviously your faith is very important to you, but going to church wasn't as important to George. And you weren't nagging him, you weren't begging him, you weren't like giving him an ultimatum. You gave him the space to figure it out for himself. And then he eventually did start to join you at church. She got you. She got you.
I just want to say really quick, I think it's funny they just called him Mr. Matchmaker. Because one time he went to the U.S. Embassy in Athens a couple of years ago, and a woman ran out of the building and was like, "Are you George? Are you Matchmaker Maria's husband?" And he's like, "In Athens?" It's like, that was really funny. But yeah, since you're mentioning faith, I think faith is actually such an interesting thing, for a lot of people, religion and faith and our distance or our participation to that is a big deal breaker.
Yeah. I really appreciated that whole part in your book as well. It was really interesting to hear how people like thought it wasn't important, but then actually realized that it was important. Yeah.
I gave both sides. And the one thing I can't stand is like, as someone who participates in the Greek American community, I have met a lot of Greek American women who will say, who'll share about their relationship, and I'm like, I think you should break up with him. And they're like, yeah, but he's Greek, and like finally, like I want to start over, and I'm like, yeah, just because someone shares the same culture or religion as you doesn't mean that they're perfect in every other way. Like they still have to be a good boyfriend, a good father, a good husband, like not in that order. And it's there's other things to consider. And I think religion being such a huge deal breaker for a lot of people, I think you have to kind of fold it in. And maybe it's because I'm an elder millennial who happened to watch My Big Fat Greek Wedding when I was like 15. So yeah, Nia Vardalos knows what's up because she married someone. I mean, that movie is a true story. It's based on a true story. And she not only married someone, but the people who produced it, Rita Wilson, who's a very proud Greek Orthodox woman.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, she goes to church down the block here. And she married at the time, on and off actor who happened to be raised Mormon. And now Tom Hanks is the one participating in Greek Orthodox services on Easter and carrying. So it's like, I think you have to think of religion as like, you can learn a little bit more about what kind of values that might have.
Yeah.
I mean, my husband was raised in Greece. So to him, our religion is not even, it's just part of the air.
Right.
it's there. There's
Yeah.
a church on every corner, right? Whereas for me, it's my community.
Yeah.
And so as our kids started to get older and participate in like Sunday school and Greek dance and Greek school, suddenly George is participating in that community, and he's like, well, I think I'm going to start going now too, because I want to see my friends every Sunday.
Yeah.
So it's, I think religion, we have to be a little bit more honest with ourselves of like, do you want this person participating?
Yeah.
Or how important is this to you? How important is it to your parents? There's a lot of questions that come up with religion, because if you're going to have that as a deal breaker, what deal breaker is it? Because like for me, for instance, I just want to wrap this up. For me, it was my children. I knew, when I was dating that one day I'd like to have kids, and I'm going to raise them Greek Orthodox Christians. So sure, I dated German Catholic men. I dated Irish Catholic men.
Yeah.
They had no problem, like the two men that I'm thinking of, they were cool, you know? But there were a lot of other men who were not cool, and it's like, that's fine. Raise your kids the way you want to raise them.
Yeah.
Some people are happy to adopt. They're like Ian from My Big Fat Greek Wedding. They're happy to get baptized in their bathing suit in front of a church,
I want to talk about scheduled sex, which you talk about in the book. Sorry, George.
My mom's here too.
Mom. Okay, I've heard people recommend scheduled sex for, long-term relationships, marriage, so many times, and I always thought it sounded absolutely boring. I'm like, that sounds like a terrible idea. Like, it makes sex so boring. But the way that you describe it in the book, I was like, oh, actually, this does make a lot of sense, because I can see how the buildup, the excitement, and then the afterglow, as you talk about, can also inspire you to have sex outside of that one scheduled day a week.
Yeah.
And if you're familiar with how female sexuality works, I read the amazing book Come As You Are by Emily Nagoski a while ago, and it's like, women don't experience spontaneous arousal the way that men do, and context matters so much. So I can understand why the idea of you're sending sexy texts all day, leading up to it, it just completely changed my mind about it.
I love that. I also want to say that, my mentor actually was the one that suggested scheduled sex. This was in the beginning of the pandemic. I had just had a baby, and I wasn't trying to have sex those first few months, but then I was like, all right, I do. But what happened with George and I is that we started getting into this really guilt sleep. So essentially every night before bed, either I would say to him, babe, I'm just so beat from today, I don't want to. And then, is that okay? Yeah, it's okay, honey. And then the next day, Maria, I'm just really tired from today. Is it okay? And I just got so tired of having that conversation for months on end. And I was like, I don't want this guilt anymore. So I talked to one of my mentors, Dr. Terry Orabuk. She's an incredible clinical psychologist. And she said, just schedule sex, Maria. And that changed everything, because I never apologized again. I'm like, oh, that's our day.
Yeah.
And the thing is,
I love in the book, you're like, and our day is, just kidding.
Just kidding, I'm not
gonna
telling
tell
you.
That. I was like, wow, she's good.
And that day changes. It's not like the same consistent.
Right.
It's also not just that one day. Like there's the afterglow. We might have sex again the next day or whatever. But the fact is that I'm no longer apologizing, or nor does he have to apologize to me every night. We also have very different sleep schedules. He sleeps at 9 p.m. And I'm a 1 a.m. person.
Oh, wow.
And now that my sister's visiting, oh God, forget it. I'm going to bed at 2 a.m. because I forced her to watch Normal People this week.
Oh, yeah. So
I
good.
wanted to traumatize
so
her just a little.
So good.
Yeah.
I love it. I love that.
Yeah. I just want to add, since I mentioned that show, there were 2 shows that I had not watched before writing this book. And God, am I happy that I didn't, because I kept them as a reward. If you write the book, you can watch these 2 shows that everyone talks about. And one of them is so old that it's embarrassing that it took so long, but it's Game of Thrones.
Oh, yeah. I never watched it.
Yeah. Oh, girl.
That's not my, that's not my style.
That's what I used to say. That's what I used to say. Anyway, and what's interesting is if I had watched Game of Thrones, that would have taken over an entire chapter. I would have probably analyzed to hell the temple.
Out of the
Arya's clearly an explorer, and she's with the Hound, who's a builder. Which opposing people here, and here they are fighting the world together. But also watching Normal People, which is traumatic. You're talking about 2 avoidant, attached characters, just like, talk to each other.
I know.
My God, there's so many scenes where I'm like, is this a cultural thing? Can't you just say an extra 3 words and, you know?
It's so hard.
She went to New York, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, she went to New York. If you don't know what that means, go watch the show. I'm
so good.
sorry.
It's so good.
Yeah.
Back to George, though.
Okay.
Mr. Matchmaker Maria, how does George feel about you sharing your relationship online and in this book?
Yeah, we're good.
Do we get a
too late
thumbs up?
now.
Yeah, I know.
No, I read anywhere that mentions George, I read it out loud to him, including the parts about his parents.
Yeah.
I have not told my in-laws.
Okay.
So that'll be fun when it gets translated to Greek. But they know it. I mean, they know the reality of our relationship, and my husband did talk to them a little bit, like, okay, Maria does say, this, right? But he's cool with it. We've been really open. He's been on the podcast a couple times too, where we talk about even like scheduling sex or how hard it is when your identity shifts after having kids. I don't think a lot of people, sometimes people are so stuck on like, I need this perfect Instagram relationship, which is fine. I guess you could have that as a criteria. But the reality is, and maybe this is a big thing that happened with my book, I happen to be a witness to seeing, the worst years of my mom's life while writing this book and watching my father and myself like care for her during that time, and how like that's a different form of love.
Yeah.
Right? And at the same time, when I had my children, you can't help it. You will go from like, that's my hot wife and that's my hot husband to that's daddy and that's mommy. And that identity shift is a real shift. You know why? Because the first 6 months, your kids can't talk. They don't communicate. They only communicate through their poop. So whenever you talk to your spouse, it's always about the texture, the color, the frequency. So it's like, how are we supposed to get sexy after this?
Yeah.
So we had to have a lot of conversations like, we need to date each other again. And I think that's what the book does. It's like, even if you're in a relationship reading it, you're reminded, we need to keep dating. We are still a team that needs to work out. The WNBA doesn't stop practicing just because they won a championship.
Right.
You have to keep working at it.
Stay in the game.
Stay in the game.
Dating in 2025 is objectively challenging.
Yeah.
Although it's like, I always want to acknowledge that, but I personally I always feel very, very hopeful. How do you hope that this book will change how people approach dating and and beyond?
Yeah, one of the big call outs that I make in the book is that the biggest deal breaker right now is reality. So I think we all think it's politics, and some of that politics is measured in reality. But reality is the number one deal breaker, and we're all getting our different realities from different places. There was a time when all of us got our news from like 3 channels. And what that did was that we all had the same 10 facts about what were happening every day in the world. And all of us might have different solutions to the problems, but at least we could agree on what the problem is. But right now, we are all slaves to our algorithm that wants to keep you single because they make more money when you're single.
Totally.
Right? So, and it spans
actually.
all industries. It's all industries. It's not just dating, it's even the music.
Yeah.
Right? Producers are catering to people under 25 of that's the hits.
Yeah.
So, to kind of keep that in mind, that like your reality in dating, it is harder when we're all living in different realities, but let's start, you probably have more things in common with the person that might share in the same socioeconomic status, that lives in your neighborhood, that might share in the same background of how you were raised, versus, what the internet is telling you is awful about them. I think it's just being open to that conversation, coming into your community, having that conversation.
Shall we do some rapid fire questions?
Absolutely,
And then
let's
we'll do the Q&A. Worst dating trend of 2025 so far?
Well, this trend came out in 2021, so I'm not over it yet, but when they say like, if he wanted to, he would,
Ugh,
there's
terrible.
like no nuance to that.
No. Most romantic thing you've ever seen a client do?
Okay, so we set up first dates, right? And I've never had a first date like cancel, like not show up, I mean. And one time though in 2014, I remember the day, August 12th, 2014, I was on a cruise ship, and I had internet just because this date was happening and I get anxiety not knowing when things are going on. And I said to her, I know this is rapid fire, but it's a good story.
I know.
Sorry, it's a good story. It's a good story. Anyway, she was on her way to her date. She falls down the stairs in her walk up and she breaks her leg. I know. And he went to the hospital.
Oh.
with flowers, and they had their date there in the ER in triage.
Stop. That is.
Isn't that, they dated for like 6 months. I love that story. They
wish
did
they
not
got
get married. Isn't that
married. I
crazy?
know.
Wouldn't that have been a really good New York Times vows
Oh my
story?
God.
Oh,
We're obsessed.
obsessed.
If Ask a Matchmaker had a theme song, what would it be?
Oh man. I don't know, Meet the Flintstones. I have no idea.
Come on, you can't make a love song. What about a love song?
Love Fool. Love Fool by,
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Whoever that's by.
yeah, whoever, that's why.
Yeah,
The
Cardigans.
Thank you.
What's your favorite piece of dating advice? Short and sweet.
My favorite piece of dating advice, be likable.
Yeah.
I'm not kidding. I think
that's a great one.
I wish more people were likable.
Last
Think about
one.
who you hate.
Last one. Fill in the blank. Love is.
The soul's recognition of another soul.
Oh,
Which is actually the definition of agape, which is the Greek word for love.
Yes.
Aristotle said that. I didn't make that up. Aristotle did that. Sorry. We have questions from the audience?
we sure do.
A lot of them. Oh, no, I'm not doing that.
Okay.
That's cute, guys. Try to start some Reddit drama. Oh my God.
How do we change situationship culture? It seems impossible not to participate in. That is.
Next time so I think the purpose of a first date is to go on a second date. It's not the place to be discovering, is this my soulmate? It's just be curious, just be interested, right? And on a first date and on a second date, you're just presenting yourself and they're presenting themselves. And then if you get to a date 3, that's when you start talking about yourselves together. What would it be like if we dated each other? And that is when you say, I would like sometime between date 1, 2, and 3, if they ask you, what are your intentions? And it comes up in this really weird, nebulous way. But that's when you say, like, well, I want the next person I date is I'd like for my next relationship to lead to marriage. If that's something you're interested in.
Right.
But how to get out of situationships is telling people, like, you should not be responding to people who leave you confused and anxious. So the secret to not being in a situationship is, are you confused? Are you feeling anxious? Stop talking, ask for clarity, or stop talking to that person.
Yeah.
You don't want to because you get addicted to the cortisol and the dopamine of that relationship.
Get off the roller
I just
coaster
saved
ride.
like 8 sessions of therapy.
I know.
So
Also, the 12-date rule.
the 12-date rule would be perfect to get anyone out of a situation.
Like, a person who wants to be in a situationship ain't waiting 12 days to have sex with you. Trust. Trust.
Or on the phone with you for 30 minutes, like, please.
I am a therapist, and this is lovely information for women. However, men seem to be getting different information. How do you cross that bridge? Which is great.
Right.
You do have male followers.
I do have male followers.
Not
I just
enough, though.
launched the round. I'm trying. 8%. Although I think that says a lot about me, that I'm a girl's girl.
Yeah.
It's funny, I just launched the Roundtable, which is a community. If you bought the book, you have access to it. And what's interesting about that is that there's actually like a lot of male signups. I want to say like 15 to 20% of the signups are men, which means that there's a lot of men who want to be a part of the conversation. I know it might not seem like a lot when I say 15 to 20%, but that's a start.
Yeah.
And you're right, there are men getting really different information. And I think what is required is people like you amplifying the message of my book. I know that sounds like I'm being vain, but it's actually a validation. And what I mean by that is, I'm gonna say these names now, but there's Jordan Peterson and there's Charlie Kirk, right? There's these bad actors in the dating space giving really faulty advice to men of how to talk to women, or they give women this push to like, you're unhappy because you have a job. You really should be a mother with kids. And men hear that. And we're all shocked because they have a platform. Well, give me that platform.
Yeah.
Right? Have this book become bigger. Because that's what's happened is we've platformed these like shocking things for so long, and then we're surprised that men are prescribing to that advice.
Yeah.
There are a lot of men who DM me every day because a woman will send them the 12-date rule method off of my Instagram, and those men don't realize that they're DMing me instead of the girl that sent it to them.
Oh, I love that. I love that.
And 9 out of 10 times, every day, I could show you my DMs. 9 out of 10 of those men are like, yeah, let's do it. And I'm like, great, go tell that girl, that woman that sent it to you.
You're like, what?
But that's what I'm saying. Like, there are men who are interested. There's probably men in this room that are interested. I have clients that are interested in, but we have to give them a seat. But we have to show them where the seat is too. You're right, though. Whichever therapist wrote that, you're right, men. There is a lot of faulty information out there.
I know, and why is it like the most evil among us seem to be the ones with the biggest platforms?
Not evil enough, but now that I'm on this stage, I'm just kidding.
How does your heritage reflect your dating philosophy?
Oh, wow.
No, great question.
That is a great question. I think there is a sentence in this book that I think is really important to remember, and it is what drove this book. Dating is a privilege. In 2025, dating is a privilege. Every single one of your ancestors, 100 years ago, 30 years ago, they didn't get to choose who they got to marry. And in fact, even the history of this country, there were enslavers who would rip families apart, take people's kids and force them to marry someone else because they wanted, let's call it, their children have more, the children of the enslaved, to work the farms or whatever. Like, there was a time when marriage was a really traumatic event. In fact, there are laws in certain countries that existed 100, 200 years ago, 500 years ago, especially one in Scotland, where because there was a town in Scotland where marriage could happen quick and it was very accessible, people would elope. And the cultural and societal norms of many countries, including the one that I'm from, if you managed to elope within 24 hours with someone that you were in love, your family was forced to accept that. Those were the laws. So we take for granted that we get to date. Because there was a time when a lot of us, our grandparents, our grandmothers, marriage was a tool of suppression, of survival, and they didn't get to choose who to spend their life with.
Yeah.
And that's
they weren't worried about soulmates.
They were not worried about soulmates, but also the thing that I find really shocking is when people say like, oh, back then, women were happier. Well, I don't know that many sociologists who were asking women in the 1940s how happy they were. So let's start there. But also, women couldn't have bank accounts until the 70s or open businesses until the 80s in this country, right? So, now that women are, I think just saying that really quick, though, is that dating is a privilege. And just thinking about my own heritage, how that drove it, the name on the book is Maria Avgitidis, and yes, that is my name, but that's also my grandmother's name. And she's a survivor of a genocide. And she didn't get to really choose who she got to marry, right? And neither did her mother, and neither did her grandmother. You kind of go down the line, right? And it's like, wow, dating is a privilege, and I want to honor my legacy and the heritage that I come from, a very proud, Greek person. But we also have to correct some of the wrongs that existed back then by giving people agency over who they get to love.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
Love that. If you leave a first date feeling unsure, not great, but not bad, do you trust that feeling or force yourself to try a second date in the hopes to be proven wrong?
There's only 2 questions you should ask after a first date. Did I enjoy myself? Am I still curious about them? And for some people, you could still feel that way, but are you still curious about them? Then you should go on a second date. That's it. It's not complicating.
Easy. Feeling sad over the idea of man/potential of relationship ending, how to get over wrong guy still fantasizing over. And they put in parentheses,
I need you to
love
finish.
you.
Whoever wrote this, don't answer because I want you to be anonymous, but I hope they finish reading the book because I think that's like one of my promises is like, if you feel this way, read the book again. Because when you start to go through the chapters of compatibility.
I said so empowering.
Yeah, when you go through the chapters of compatibility, of communication, of avoidance, and all these things, you should be able to snap yourself out of that fantasy. Because it's always the short situationships that have the most hold over us because you're fantasizing and you have to mourn that fantasy. Yeah. You didn't get to celebrate Halloween with them. You didn't get to do New Year's. You didn't get to go to Capri on Labor Day. I'm fantasizing here, aren't I? Yeah. But so that's what you're mourning is that fantasy.
Yeah, and because, there's when you haven't actually dated the person and broken up, in that case, you're like, okay, well, we broke up because these things weren't working out. But in a situationship, you're like, oh, but I think he liked me and
Yeah. Oh, it was a bad time.
yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Right person, wrong time?
Yeah.
No. Try again. How can you tell the difference between superficial chemistry and a lasting connection?
Bids, I mentioned that in the book towards the end. That's from the Gottman Institute. So, one of the ways to witness if a relationship is going in the healthy direction is to see how they respond to bids, the bid to connect. So I'll give you an example. For instance, if you're driving with someone and you see a beautiful tree and you say, oh, wow, what a beautiful tree, how your partner responds to you saying that. Because you saying what a beautiful tree is actually, even though you're looking at the tree, you're actually asking to connect with your partner, right? Because you're saying, like, look at this experience that I'm having, look at this valuable tree. And then if this person that you're with is driving says, oh, wow, that is beautiful, that's a positive reaction to the bid. But if they don't respond, or if they're like, ugh, you're always looking at trees, that is not healthy. And so to me, superficial chemistry is like kind of thinking about when you're trying to connect, how are they responding to that form of connection?
Yeah. Okay, 3 more questions. What are your thoughts on sorry, I actually want to save that for the end.
Okay.
How do you recommend meeting someone if you're not on the apps? I remember once you told me that you're like, if I was a single woman, I would just hang out at Whole Foods because you're like, they can afford, Whole Foods.
This is how you know how far back I know her. I lived in Chelsea at the time. And I was like, I know how much rent is. All right. If you can afford the Whole Foods in Chelsea and not the Trader Joe's, no, I would hang. Yeah, hell yeah, why not? No, but if I'm being honest, there's I think Eventbrite has really picked up on the events that they have listed that are community based. I would also say, I'm not saying this because I'm here, but your local Y, even the 92nd Street Y, or your local JCC, or your local, whatever community venue you have, it is a wealth of people who want to be there and connect with other people. That's why you're all here, right? Like, I know you're here to see me, which is nice. But at the same time, like, look at what the spirit of the 92nd Street Y is, right? It's to give back to the community and to let people connect with each other. And there's, like, if you look at the website of 92nd Street Y, there's just so many things to do. So yeah, if I were a single woman and I lived in Manhattan, you better believe I'd be here once a week taking classes, meeting new people, but also trying to tell the people that I'm meeting, I'm looking for someone.
Yeah.
And next time you're out with your friends, can you invite me? I'm not asking you to set me up. I'm asking you to think of me when you go out next time socially. Let me do the rest.
And that's actually, that distinction is, I think, really important. Because
Yeah.
I be telling everybody these days, I'm available for a setup.
Yeah.
But actually, it's the
reverse.
invite me.
Invite
when
me
you're
out. Invite me out. I mean, I just had
gonna be out with single.
I had a book reading on Saturday. They're not here, I think. And there were 2 people that I want to set up, and I didn't tell them that.
Oh.
And but I was like, hey, we're having my daughter's birthday party. Do you want to come over to my house? Because I thought, maybe they'll talk to each other in the backyard, and they did. And now I'm trying to. Do you like her? She likes him, so we're gonna.
Okay, last question. Why haven't you set Chrissy up? Oh wait, no, sorry. Just kidding.
Have I?
Just kidding. No, you never have. But honestly, and I was actually going to talk about this with my therapist, because actually Maria introduced me to my therapist, which I am so grateful for.
It's a good match.
It is actually the best match of my life. But, back in the day, because obviously we've been friends for so long now, like, you obviously always tell people, like, oh, you can enter my free database and whatnot. And I also feel like this speaks to, like, I'm at such a different place in my life right now. But the thought of entering your database and being set up with men who were looking to get married, that was really scary to me.
Back then.
Yes.
Yeah.
Less so now, but I
Yeah.
still have never entered your database. I don't know
Yeah, yeah.
why, but it's just, listen, I have my reasons.
I can't ever set you up if you're not in there for legal reasons.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I
that would
didn't
be-
know
yeah,
that.
It's a different kind of business.
Okay, I'll put myself in there. I'll put myself in there. I actually always thought, I was like, listen, I think if Maria had someone that she really thought I was a match for, she would tell me.
Yeah, I would. I
But now I know I gotta
Yeah.
put myself in the. Okay, actual last question.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on the rise of open relationships? Can they be done in a healthy way?
I don't know. I will be the first to tell you that I don't know enough. I have been looking at the trends of this. I have been speaking to some of my colleagues who work in that arena of dating, because the dating umbrella is huge, right?
Yeah, of
It's
course.
it's not just the apps and the matchmakers. There's all the different types of relationships that could happen.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think there's no judgment towards people who want to participate in ENM or ethnical non-monogamy, but I'm not the expert in that, and also I don't think I'm interested in being the expert in that because
I get that.
I think you have to kind of pick your lane as a matchmaker, and my lane is monogamy. I think it's still a pretty popular thing to do.
For now.
So, I'm gonna, but there are plenty of people out there that are experts in this,
Yeah.
and I like to hear from them. So I'm listening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. That's it. Thank you, Maria. Thank you, everyone.